Today, we're honored to have Attorney General Lynn Fitch. She's the first woman to hold this office in Mississippi. She has been well known to shape policies that affect women and families in our state, not only in our state, but nationally. In 2022, she was named Time's 100 Most Influential People.
Good afternoon, General Fitch. Thanks so much for joining us today. Well, your office has been so accommodating to us. Everybody's been a delight to work with. We love your digs here, and you've made us feel very comfortable. So we appreciate the warm welcome. And, you know, we talked a little bit about what we wanted to speak with you about today. And obviously there are many, many issues that you cover as Mississippi's Attorney General. But before we get there, we kind of want to get a little bit of a background from you, because just reading like your Wikipedia page, you seem like you've had a lot of pivots and you've navigated a lot of different things in your life. And that might be something that our listeners especially would be really interested to hear. So, I mean, we know you grew up in Holly Springs, Mississippi. Is that right?
I did, North Mississippi.
Right. And then from there, you went to school up there, and then you went to Ole Miss Law School. Is that right?
I did.
And then after law school, tell us what you did at that point with a law degree.
Well, I've been very blessed, but I'll say to both of you, it's so special to be with you all. And for everyone that is listening or watches the podcast, it always goes back to your friends and the relationships and the people that you know in your lives. So I'm grateful for both your friendships and the opportunity to sit down and to visit. So it makes it very special for me as well. So all the things that I've done always relate back to, again, your relationships, your friendships, those you keep up with, those that you always stay in contact with, the people you can trust and rely on. I was very fortunate when I left law school at Ole Miss. I was an intern at the Attorney General's office. So that was just an incredible internship experience. And then they asked me to stay on. So I served as a special assistant attorney general for 5 years. My first 5 years of practice were at this office. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. I loved every minute of it back then. So for me to come full circle now, it's just such an honor. It's just so humbling to know all the angles, understand this office, the complexity of who we represent across our state, how every Mississippian is supported and represented in this office. It's just such an incredible honor to come full circle. Mm-hmm. So that's where I got my start. And again, the friendships, I enjoyed working with the legislature. Mm-hmm. We were just talking earlier about how important that is, working with Governor Barber. Yeah. And the opportunity to just meet people all along the way. So I was here working, and an opportunity came up to go work at the legislature, at the House of Representatives. So again, having all the friendships and meeting a lot of those legislators was a great experience. And so they asked me to come over and serve as Ways and Means Counsel and Local and Private Committee Counsel at the House of Representatives. Again, an amazing experience. You know, here I'd been working with agencies, I'd been doing litigation, and then to be able to go over there and then now to write the legislation and to be involved in that side of it was great. Meeting all the people there, my chairmen were amazing to me, and that's an important pivot because when I left the legislature to work, I went into private practice. Again, people I had met through this office, through my legislative stint. But when Governor Barber came back in 2004, Chief of Staff, Charlie Williams, who had been my former boss and chairman, called me up and said, hey, you have a heart for public service. Will you come back? But that's back to that relationship and having that friendship and that trust. And I was so excited. I don't even think I asked where when he first called me, because I do enjoy public service. I feel like it's so rewarding. It's such a blessing to be able to help those, particularly those who need us the most, and to really, like you said, drive policy, shape things, and doing it from a woman's perspective has been amazing. So that was kind of a pivot for me too, to come back, because that really, you know, not that you ever script out your life. I think God always scripts out where we're going. We might think we're going to get involved, but he really has our plan for us. And it's just been amazing to be back, having worked for Governor Barber, having been the executive director of the State Personnel Board, then serving as state treasurer for 2 terms, and then now to hold this office. It's just incredible. Every day is a new day. We never do what we did yesterday, and we're always looking to be proactive. I have a great team, and I think that's what has made the difference for me all through the years. There are a number of people that I met from the very beginning who still work on the team. And so I think that makes a huge difference when you're really trying to craft things, to be proactive, and particularly in the women's area.
Sure. I mean, you just gave I could go into each one of those categories of pivots that you just gave us. And I'm going to let Serena interject here in a second before I take up all the time. But in between all of that history that you just gave us, you also had 3 children and managed to be a mom. How did that role in your life impact the choices that you made in terms of your career?
Well, I think serving as a mother is just the greatest gift, your children. And always that my family was first. And, as always balance as mothers, you look for those opportunities. You don't want to miss whatever activity they're in. And I think certainly being in whatever role we've been in, whether it's private practice or serving in the public space, it's always about how you balance that, late night running, to get something, buy something, whatever your child might need for that craft or that activity. But at the same time, being able to feel like you are doing the best professionally that you could. And so I think it's looking for that absolute balance.
And that's a great segue into the question of how some of your individual personal experiences shaped your professional focus throughout the years. And so had you not had that experience as a mother, you may not be so focused on some of the women's issues that you have been and done so well as Attorney General. So are there other instances like that you think you could point back to personal experiences that shaped your professional focus?
Yeah, absolutely. I was very blessed when I first got out of law school, and now I've been practicing for a few decades. I was very blessed in that I had a mentor. So I always encourage, our younger attorneys, look for a mentor, be willing to ask for someone to mentor you, because I had a mentor, and it was Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Gandy.
Oh, wow.
What an amazing time.
Yes.
She mentored to about 12 women. Yes. And that really shaped a lot of the things that I've been able to do over the course of my practice. But, Governor Gandy was such a gracious lady. Think about it, she was the first trailblazer, the first statewide elected official. She always said, help those that need you, be gracious, be kind in whatever you're doing, but, look out for others. So that was a huge inspiration for me. So she took about 12 of us, and she would mentor with us. And she, about once a quarter, we'd get together, we'd run our lunches, and she'd say, what do you do? All right, how's your personal development plan? Where do you see yourself in the next year or the next 3 years? That made a huge difference in my life, just having that guidance and that insight and thinking, wow, this is the lady that was the trailblazer and invested in all of us in the future. And we all still keep up, all of us who were fortunate to have been mentored by Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Gandy. Now, there's a couple of other things that came from that, which have really shaped all the things I've been doing. We're sitting at the table one day, and she said, there's a national trend right now where across our country, bar associations are having women in the profession committees. And we were like, wow, we need to do that. That is great, Governor Gandy. And she looked at me and she said, you need to make the presentation. So, of course, Governor Gandy, absolutely. Carol West, she's like, so we went over and made the presentation to the Board of Bar Commissioners. And they were very gracious. I will say that they said, all right, ad hoc committee, 1 year. Can you do all that in a year? I just shook my head and said, we'll try. But this kind of goes back to where we are for women in our profession. So they did allow that. I chaired it for the first 3 years, that committee.
I had no idea that you had done that. Every time we do these things, we learn new stuff about people. But just as a female lawyer, I had no idea that you were the one that instituted the Women in the Profession Committee of the Bar Association.
And it's just been so strong for our women lawyers to be in that position.
And about what year was that?
Oh my goodness, let's see. We've been doing the Gandy Lecture Series 32 years. So that was probably 34. Because in my second year of chairing the Women's Profession Committee, nobody showed up one day for a luncheon except Carol West and me. And we said, we should do a CLE for women. Okay.
That's how that got started. Amazing. This is great. We're learning all kind of women's history about Mississippi right now.
I went over back to the Board of Bar Commissioners and I said, this committee, we would like to do this. We'd like to have our own CLE. And they said, okay, that'd be great. Good luck. So I chaired it the first year, the 25th year, the 30th year, and have spoken at 31 and 32 for the Gandy series. And now it's a section of the bar.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So look how far we've come.
Yes.
It's so exciting, women professional lawyers to see that and know that we stood very strong for women back then and how successful we are now.
And I'm so glad you brought all that up because we have actually, surprisingly, a large number of younger female followers. And I didn't know that history about the Mississippi Bar and the women's section. And so now those younger lawyers, had you not shared that today, they may have never heard that story before. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you. And we do need to encourage them, and we need to mentor to them. Because one of the things we did early on when I first chaired that committee, we found that we lost a lot of our younger women lawyers. About 30, we lost them for various reasons, not having a support system, might have children, whatever the case might be. And so they kind of dropped out because back then we had no part-time, we had no different schedules, no flexibility for young women attorneys. So wow, look where we've come now to have all those opportunities, to not have those issues as you raise your children, because we have those different capabilities so that women can continue professionally.
Fabulous.
You've talked about having a super mentor, probably in our state, the most historical female mentor that someone could have. And you've talked about having friends, and friends led to jobs and other opportunities that you had. But General Fitch, at the end of the day, it was your own gumption that got you where you are. And I would like to hear from you about how you made that first step to decide to take yourself to the statewide position of treasurer when you decided you were going to throw your hat in the ring to become treasurer of the state of Mississippi.
Well, it was an interesting moment because first and foremost, you have to talk to your family, because if you get in, everybody's involved. Your entire family's involved. You're under a microscope. So if you don't have the blessings of your family, it's very hard to be successful. My family was all in. And, having been here, having worked for Governor Barber, having represented different agencies, particularly the Treasurer's Office, having been a bond lawyer in private practice, I knew that office. And when it became available, I said, I think this is my calling. I think Governor Gandy would say, now. Because she was very good about consistently calling and say, are you ready? Are you ready? And so we saw a number of women who moved into judicial slots from the time we started the Gandy Lecture Series and the Women's Profession Committee. We just didn't have many that would move over, some into mayor's positions, some on the school boards, municipal county supervisors, just weren't having anybody really make that big jump over. And I thought, wow, I've been so blessed. I have had her as a mentor all these years. I have to do this. They gave me zero chance of winning, but it went back to your friends. So I called my friends. I called, people that I had known all across time, and they were so supportive. And they said, you should do this. You have the skill set. It's not like you're jumping into something you don't know. You've been in state government. You understand how it works. You've represented at state agencies in the past. So this is not foreign to you. So really, that empowerment was such a gift to say, hey, we'll help you all across the state. And that's what really kind of launched me into, I can do this. And I'm going to jump in and give it a whirl.
And that's where you were first given the opportunity to shape policy that has resonated across the state with the financial literacy program that you started there. And that was from, what I recall, the Women's Summit. That was the major theme of the Women's Summit this year as well, too. So thinking back to your treasurer days, what initiated that this is something that's important to me that I think that we need to do some education on, and I'm going to use this office as a platform to kind of drive policy around financial literacy.
As I looked it over, particularly for women just didn't have financial education. They'd not gotten it in school. They'd not learned it from their parents. So consequently, their children didn't know what was going on. And as you look at Mississippi, we still are extremely high in poverty for everyone in our state, but particularly for women. And so I looked, and these children are all caught up in it too. So how are they going to get out of this cycle if we don't teach them financial education? I've now taken it to the legislature for over a decade. I think hopefully this time it'll pass so that every child graduates and they have a financial education credit, and that's part of their graduation process, because we're doing a disservice to our children if we don't teach them about money. And so I feel like we're going to help elevate our entire state if we do that. And so I couldn't get them to pass it early on. So at the treasurer's office, I just went out and raised money, and we called it TEAM, Treasurer's Education About Money. And we went into the schools, and by the time I left there, we had trained about 140,000 students across Mississippi in financial education. So that was exciting, and I appreciate all the partners that believed and put up money. And then we started training the teachers, too, because the teachers didn't know. And then we started doing some parent groups at the schools, because the parents signed up because they didn't know. And I just thought, if we can do more and more of that, that makes our best day for the state of Mississippi. It trains our workforce, and it doesn't matter what you're going to grow up to be. You still have to understand money. And we really need to help our young people who grow up into the adults, into the workforce, to understand.
I'm sure that that role as treasurer and a leadership position on a statewide basis gave you some motivation for your current office and seeking your current office. But I would also think that at some point it had to be daunting thinking that you might become the first female attorney general for the state of Mississippi and one of very few in the entire country. What was that like for you? What was that decision process that you went through to get there?
Well, I mean, again, the most humbling experience and such an honor. And this is certainly probably the most complex office in state government. And I felt, like I said, from very early on, having been in this office, I understood this office. Having been a client for 8 years, I understood from that capacity and what we need to do, how we need to serve. And so, again, I felt like my skill set really lined up. So for me, when I go out and talk about this office and why I felt like I could do this job, even though I was going to be the first female, I understood the office. I understood the needs of the people across Mississippi and that this office represents everyone. This is a very non-political office. This is how do you help people? What do you do? How do you protect the state interests? And so being out there, but people were very excited. For me, that was, again, very uplifting and empowering. They thought, oh my goodness, you're going to go for this. I'm like, yes. So it made me feel really good when people were extremely supportive.
Do you ever have those moments of just, I really can't walk through that door? Like, I don't know if I can get through that door. And if you are there and just kind of like hanging onto the doorknob and you're not sure you can get through kind of moments, what makes you open it and go through it?
Well, I think we all experience that at some points in our life, but we're all very driven personalities. And again, knowing that you have a real mission and there's a real charge and no one else can do it but you. And so when you make that entrance and then you have an amazing team to get to work with, you know that you're going to make things happen. And we've seen it come together time and time again in this office. This office, again, is very hard driven. We have thousands of open cases. We're doing everything, the criminal side, the civil side, but we have the compassionate side in this office. And I think that makes a huge difference as we talk about the initiatives, the programs that we do here. Everyone in this office resonates. Yes, we have a mission. We are the guardians of the rule of law, but we are here to serve. And we embrace that every single day. And kind of the motto is in our office, you go home at the end of the day, who'd you help today? How'd you make a difference?
And you've obviously done that very well with the human trafficking initiative that you've put in place here. And if you would just kind of share with the listeners a little bit about what you've done in that area, because that's a huge policy area that you have greatly impacted in our state, driving the policy and then seeing the immediate results of some of the processes that y'all put in place. So if you would just take a few moments and share that with us.
I will. And it's a tough subject. Human trafficking is hard. There's still a lot of people, not only in our state, but in our country, who just don't realize it's really going on. You kind of don't want to believe it, but it really is. That was one of the things that I said, if I was fortunate enough to serve in this office, we would attack human trafficking. We'd go after it very strong. And in order to do that, again, it's always back to your partnerships, your relationships, coming in and partnering with all of our different law enforcement agencies, because you can't do this by yourself. You got to have everybody on board, your federal, your state, your local, to go after these traffickers. Because remember, human trafficking is a $150 billion illegal industry annually across our globe. That's daunting, isn't it?
It really isn't. I've learned a lot more about that issue very recently, and some of it was spurred on by the Women's Summit that we'll talk about in just a minute. When you mentioned the AG of Louisiana being present at the summit this year and your joint effort with her, and hearing from you about the fact that the Super Bowl is one of the biggest human trafficking events, and I just found that so fascinating. But for our listeners who may not even know what human trafficking is, can you just kind of give us just a bare bones definition of what that means and what is happening?
Absolutely. These are victims, and they have been taken into a ring. A lot of it is a sex trafficking ring, and none of these young women, young men didn't ask to be in these rings. And I think the other thing that is just so hard to understand is the majority of these individuals that we rescue, we call them takedowns, and I'll kind of walk through that, but they were trafficked by a family member or somebody that they loved and trusted, like a boyfriend or something like that. And they traffic these young people for quick cash and drugs. And again, it doesn't matter. So now they're in this ring, and it's this vicious cycle, and they can't get out. So now they've gone through all this for years and years, and this is their money. This is how they eat. This is how they live, and they can't pull out, and there's nobody there to help them. So when we came in, we said, you know what, we're going to train up our law enforcement. We're going to do operations. We're going to do takedowns. Takedowns is absolutely going out, getting the pimp or the John and arresting him or her, because there are women traffickers too. Remember, this is their money, so they're protective of these victims. We see them as victims, as these individuals in their trafficking ring. And so we got to take them down, and we got to get this individual to safety. And I think that's really key too, because there's a lot of predators out there. There are a lot of men that think they're meeting a 14-year-old girl for sex. They're out there on so many different levels. So going after these predators is very hard. And at the same time, the compassionate side. How do we get that victim? How do we get them to safety? So we really expanded that role in doing that. Our most recent operations, we have a sexual assault nurse there when we bring the victim back. We've got counselors, we've got shelter advocates, we're talking to them, but we have survivors now. And when you have a survivor that sits across like we're all talking and says, hey, it's going to be okay. There's some hope. And all these people here are here to help you. And we don't keep them all. I wish we did. But we send them with a backpack, with numbers, with information, anything that they might need. And sometimes it's 3 months later, maybe 6 months later. And they say, hey, we're ready. We want to get out of this. The horrific thing is not only are these lives, at risk, but, we've rescued 22 minors. Some of them are babies, toddlers, 5-year-olds. So you see it all. I go out on the takedowns because I can't tell you from my heart if I don't tell you I've seen it all. I'm out there, I wear my bulletproof vest. I get out there with my team members and I watch and I see the takedowns and I see the victims come back. And it's rewarding and such a blessing to know that we're able to help with all of our partners. We just did Operation Guardian Force. And it was the first time we've done a statewide human trafficking event. We started on the coast, went through Hattiesburg, Tupelo, and ended in DeSoto County. We brought all of our task force together. We had about 400 law enforcement officers together working all those different ops all the way up. But here's the real beauty. We went after and arrested 72 of those criminals. They were drug dealers, predators, the pedophiles. 72 in 2.5 weeks. Wow. And we rescued 29.
That's amazing.
So it's very effective. And I think that's really key. We have the gold standard. Our team does amazing work. And everybody will stay around the clock, do whatever we need to do to make sure we get that last victim out, to make sure we find that last predator and we arrest him. And then we prosecute them really hard. The legislature's been great about giving opportunities to have new laws for us to really strengthen them. Like our last 2 human trafficking individuals, in 48 years, 45 years, day for day. So the message is from us, if you come into Mississippi and you're going to traffic these individuals, we're gonna go after you really hard.
And you would think a state like Mississippi, you wouldn't have that kind of problem, but because of the major corridors that we have running through here with 55, which goes from New Orleans to Chicago, I guess, and then I-20 and I-10 down in the central part and the coastal part. I mean, I guess, is that one of the reasons that you think that it's so prevalent here? I'm just trying to figure out.
I think that's absolutely a key factor. I really do. I mean, the accessibility, the capability to do that. And then I think some of it is too, being in a big rural state, there are easy ways to try to move these girls. And I will say, just to your point too, I mean, we work with all of our colleagues in our AGO offices across the southern part, and we talk to each other. Is there a ring coming across? We're watching these girls. I mean, it's like a TV show. We are seeing the ads. We're looking at, where they're coming across, and it helps us be very successful. And then to go with that, we created Be the Solution. All the partners, Department of Public Safety, Department of Education, Department of Ag, then private partners, hospitality, gaming, casinos, convenience, and the list just goes on, the medical community, because knowledge is really powerful, but only if we share it and we actually use it. And that's really helped us with our tips and understanding, looking at locations. And then if we get a call, I'm like, hey, we think this young woman at this convenience store is a victim, then let us get out there. And if it's not, that's okay too. But if it is, we've saved a life. We just started this new app nationwide. We're the pilot, called Simply Report. It's a free app. We're going to be rolling it out. But we started on our Operation Guardian Force. So that, again, easy reporting. If you're sitting somewhere and you say, I think that might be an individual that's being trafficked, you can sit there and type it right in on the app. It comes immediately to us. And then we can immediately, send out law enforcement and determine, is this individual being a trafficked victim? And I think that's going to be a game changer for us as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what was the name of the app again?
Simply Report.
Yeah, we're going to put that in our show notes so that listeners can have access to it, because it's obviously, like you said, a really important tool that could go a long way to helping a lot of people down the road.
And again, when everybody reports and the traffickers know, hey, Mississippi is on high alert, they're going to call us in, then that only helps us and it saves those individuals.
I'm so glad that we were able to hear more about the human trafficking issue, because we did touch on it at the Women's Summit. So that sort of brings me back around to wanting to talk about the Women's Summit, because it was such a great experience for Serena and me this year, and we loved being one of your sponsors, and we're thrilled to be able to participate in some small way and hope to continue to do so in the future. But this sort of reinvention of the Attorney General's office that you've done since you've been here with all your new initiatives has also led to this creation of the Mississippi Women's Summit. So if you tell our listeners what brought that about and what is it?
Well, thank you so much. And I really, again, back to the friendships, you and Serena, it means a lot. And thank you for being there and being such a special part of the Women's Summit. You know, it kind of pulls me back to the days on trying to create the Women's Profession Committee, bringing women together. Very busy. We don't take the time. We should be spending time with each other, empowering each other, lifting each other up. And it's hard because we're doing a lot of different things every single day, not only professionally, whether you have children, grandchildren, or whatever the case might be. So I always had this vision, we need to do a women's summit. So when we did it last year in Oxford, I didn't know if we'd have 10 women come, 100. And again, my incredible team did amazing work, planning the speakers, and the same this year. I mean, the first year we had 400 women. So when we moved it from Oxford down here, again, we just thought, okay, it's going to be great. Maybe we'll hit our 400 mark again. And we had over 600 women. And again, it gives women the opportunity to have friendships, people you hadn't seen in a long time, meet new friends, resources, talk about lifting each other up, being there for one another. And I think that's really special, to know that there are 600 other women and we're all in this together and we're having a great time. We're enjoying each other's company. We're learning. And again, we're giving each other the support that we all need. And again, having amazing sponsors like y'all, and being a women-owned business. We had about 50 women-owned businesses, and for women to support women and coming out, and women go, oh my goodness, I have all these new places I'm going to shop now. I didn't even know, and I think that just shows, again, putting us in direct contact with each other, opening those lines of communication and going, oh, these are new friends, or these are old friends, and I want to be there with them. Mm-hmm. So we were excited. It was an incredible time. I mean, Chapel Hart, oh my goodness, what a Mississippi group of women, and what a show they put on. And then, like Shannon Bream, she's a Florida girl, and having her here, and all the amazing women speakers.
You had a stellar lineup for sure. I mean, just a stellar lineup. And one of the things that an immediate result that you don't know this until I hadn't even thought about it until just now, but one of the vendors who was 2 spaces down from me, I'm doing business with her now.
Oh, nice.
She's doing all my monogramming now for my jackets at my store. And I didn't know her before the event, and we connected that day, and I moved from another vendor to her. I moved my business to her because of the connection we made that day.
Oh, that's perfect. There you go.
It's making an immediate impact in women-owned businesses. And one of the other vendors there, I purchased a scarf from her there that day. So yeah, that was really, I went into it thinking it was going to be more policy oriented just because of my background and, normally going to those kind of a thing. But it wasn't like that. It was empowerment. It was engagement. It was meeting new people. It was really just a blessing. And so I appreciate you for doing that. I appreciate you for doing it for the women across the state, and for the women that don't know about it, they will be able to learn about it in our notes for our podcast, and we would love to be involved again next year.
Oh, that would be great. That would be amazing. And we've already got the dates. They are the end of August and September 1st at the Refuge again. And you can sign up already. We've got 300 women already signed up for next year.
Wow, that's terrific.
So we'll encourage, women to please sign up, because I think it's really special. Just as women, we need that. We need to be there with each other. We need to be, like I said, empowering one another and
I love
engaging.
that it was across the board age-wise. The diversity of the women that were there, the diverse professions that were there. Because I do think sometimes, there are women's group like the Women in the Bar, the group but we're all female lawyers. But this was unique because it brought all kind of cross sections together. I mean, you had medical professionals there, you had financial professionals there, you had entrepreneurs there, you had political type folks there, you had attorneys there. I mean, it really was a great representation of women from all across the state. So kudos to you for that.
Well, thank you. And what a great opportunity for everybody to meet one another.
Right.
And like you said, already doing business together, working together, or if something comes up in this part of the state, you go, oh, wait, I met her on the coast. Or maybe she's up in Oxford. Or I now know all the women that were there.
Right. And one of the reasons Serena and I wanted to even start this podcast was because of the fact that we know that there are these people out there, not only in our state, but across the country, who have stories to tell about how they picked themselves up from dire circumstances, or how they came up with an idea and turned it into something, or, were full-time moms and then invented something and sold it on eBay, or whatever it might be. There were these stories out there just among our friends and people that we knew that have, a story to tell and incredible things to share with other people that could be inspirational to them. Because I find and have found with myself, with my friends, with my family, clients, everybody faces times when they have to reinvent their life or pivot in some way. A chapter closes, your kids go to college, you have to start a new life for yourself without them at home, or you get divorced and you have to start a new life as a single person when you've been married forever. Someone dies and you have to deal with that through grief. And so there are all these moments in time, not only in women's life, but in everyone's life, when you have to open a door and walk through. And at the Women's Summit, you had several women on the dais that spoke about things that they went through and that they had to overcome in order to start their small businesses. I think about Leisha Pickering and her story with opening her business here in Mississippi that's just grown tremendously. And so I think every opportunity we have to hear those kinds of stories is just one more little piece of information somebody who is afraid to open the door can lean on and say, okay, they did it, I can do it. It's just like having this conversation with you and our other guests that we've had. I think every time that we give a listener an opportunity to hear someone else's story, it becomes better for them and it gives them some sense of belief that they can do it too. So I appreciated all the people that spoke at the summit because I felt like they all had great stories to share and offered me inspiration, and I could see from the rest of the folks inspiration as well.
Well, thank you. They amazing women that were there. And again, as you said, different stories. And I thought this was sort of an interesting and a very engaging, and for women to feel so comfortable. For all of us, it's very easy for all of us to talk about our faith. I am, certainly a believer, and I think it's important that we have that conversation. Every woman that was on that stage, or that was our keynote, be it Shannon Bream, be it Chapel of the Heart, they talked about God. It was always that thread of faith got them through it. Faith led them to that, oh, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to keep believing, I'm going to get to the other side of that door. And I thought, what an inspiration. This is very unscripted. Every woman talked about that. And I think that's really impactful because women felt so comfortable not only to talk about what they were doing, but they talked about their faith in God and how they got there.
Do you think that's more of a unique conversation for women to have versus men, especially in a professional setting?
I think so, but I think you've not seen as much of that. But I think in this environment, women felt very comfortable talking about their faith and truly sharing that there were tough times. And, God was there for me. God helped me through this. My faith got me to the next level. And I quite honestly just think that's an amazing revelation for every woman to talk about it.
Yeah, we've had other guests that have had that same experience. They said it was, a God wink or God opened the door, or, it was their faith that got them through knowing it was going to be okay at the end of the day. It was going to be tough, and I might not know exactly how it's going to look at the end of the day, but I've got faith that something good is going to come out of this, and I'm going to turn this in my direction.
And I think for all of us, having that belief and that God is helping us get to whatever our next journey stop is so key. But I will say, as you both said, all age groups, everybody was there. Everybody had a great time. And I think, I looked around the night Chapel of the Heart was performing, and every woman was up, moving. It didn't matter if you were 80 or 20. And I think that's a great comfort level too, instead of like being more introverted, but there was just great ease about every woman being there together and having fun.
Well, the last initiative that we'd like to bring up with you and ask you to address is the Women's Empowered Initiative about the maternal aspects of things where, Mississippi, we do have the highest teenage pregnancy rate. We have the highest low birth weight rate in the country. But you are attacking that from this office, which is something different that hasn't been done. And so this is post Dobbs. And of course, you led the charge on that. State is now and forever going to be recognized for that. And so we appreciate your leadership in that area. And then now the aftermath of that, what are you doing now? Because we will have, more new babies, I would suspect. And so you have some initiatives in place that will help lift these women up that maybe find themselves in situations where motherhood is a struggle for them. So if you would share a little bit about that and what your office is doing in that area.
Sure. And thank you for that. The Mississippi Dobbs case, it changed history. And that was our case. And think about that. That's just, again, it was a God case and it could have gone a lot of different directions. And so to come to Mississippi and have a female attorney general leading this case was all supposed to be the right people, the right time, the right places. And so as we approached that case, we looked at it very differently. We've all been in cases and you look at, okay, how are we going to plan? How am I going to get ready for this litigation? What am I going to do for my opening, my closing, whatever that might be? And this was a different scenario. And we'd given this opportunity to really embrace a huge change. And so to post up the question to overturn Roe v. Wade. And they're like, oh, you're Mississippi. I'm like, oh, we're doing it. And some of the backstories is what we did initially to how we got to the Empowerment Project. So in our brief and in our argument, we said, to certainly go back to the states. And we knew every state would look at it differently. Every state would have a different plan, as it should happen across the board. But we also argued empower women and promote life. And we said in Mississippi, we're ready. If you give us that job, in Mississippi, we will take action. We're not just going to talk about it. We're not just going to put it in our brief. We're not going to do our argument, but we're actually going to do something. So we had a very strategic plan as we went into that case. We had outreach plan. We had amicus plan. We had everybody engaged, a lot of partners. And so as we came into it, and then the decision came down, it was like, now we have the next strategic plan. What are we doing? The Empowerment Project. And I will say to the legislature, thank you, thank you, thank you. They have been great. I have taken so many proposals over there, and they have passed nearly everything that I've asked for. Because it is an action plan. And I like us leading in this regard too. I like when people say, hey, I need your legislation. How'd you do this? How's your policy looking? I'm like, yes, we're glad to give it to you. But in the Empowerment Project, we looked at things that were important to all of us. What are we going to do? So we had 5 pillars. One was childcare. We need affordable, accessible, quality childcare. We've all been through that. Childcare is so expensive. It takes up so much of your paycheck. And think about if you're a young mother. And right now in Mississippi, to send an infant and a toddler to daycare for a year costs more than to send someone to one of our fine colleges and universities in tuition. Isn't that alarming?
That is alarming.
So we have to change that dynamic for sure, because we got to give a support system to these young mothers, these young families. COVID was terrible. So we looked at the next pillar about having more flexible work options. And as we were talking about earlier, we almost had none. And we've grown in our state, but COVID, as bad as it was, it made us review that and go, particularly, how can we help our young parents? How can we help our young mothers? Because we don't want to lose them. We want to keep them in the workforce. We looked at child support, because child support, women bear the brunt of that. Economically, financially, women carry the burden. So how can they upskill? How can they have their resources if they're not getting any dollars in? And right now, 4 out of 5 parents that are the custodial parents are mothers. And the majority of people that owe the child support are the fathers. And we looked at it from a different perspective too. If those dads will give something, then they'll be invested in their child's life. And you want to get to a healthy environment for that child. But at the same time, you want to help that mother. And we got to figure out how do we keep them from gaming the system. Switch jobs, you do different things, and we got to figure out how do we get the child support into the hands of that mother for that child, because that can make the difference between a child going hungry that night or having dinner. And I think it's that significant. And particularly here, we have to address that. We looked at how we should provide resources and tools to upskill our mothers, our young mothers to be. because they need to know, what are their options? How do I get that job? How do I go back to community college? How do I get my degree? What do we do? How do I go to a trade school? And so that, again, is very impactful for the workforce and for the children. And then we looked at a really tough one. We've got to fix our broken foster care and adoption system. I mean, that's horrific. There are too many children that are out there right now. There are about 4,000 children that are wards of the state as we sit here and talk. And we've got to get them into forever homes and have love and be comforted and help them on their journey. So those were kind of our 5 big pillars. And as I visited with the legislature, everything that we brought over, like tax credits for adoption, tax credits for childcare. Yes, this year was paid maternity leave. First time ever. Wow. It would have been nice to have had it years ago. But that says to women in state government, you're important, and we're going to support you as you have these precious children. Safe haven baby boxes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, what a blessing that is. We have now 8 in the state. We've had 3 babies born. Isn't that so amazing to read about these births and this courageous young mother who takes her baby there rather than reading about it in the paper where you found a baby in a dumpster or in the woods? I mean, so we see that's just a great opportunity to do that as well. So there are a lot of things like that, but then the Mama program is my personal favorite.
Yeah, I loved hearing about that. Tell our listeners about what that is.
So this is Mississippi Access to Maternal Assistance, MAMA. And there's an app and a website, mama.ms.gov. Free app, download it, utilize it. It is amazing. Now, you know very well, you go to the legislature and you go, hey, I'd like a new program. Not so much. And I said, oh, we want to do this. We think this is a one-stop shop. We know it's never been done before, but we want to do this, bring all the resources together, have our public resources out there, our private resources, and we want to add our faith-based resources. So if you're that young mother or mother-to-be and you Google Hinds County, you've got 9 different things you can look at. 3 clicks, you can get everything you want. And you can see every resource here in Hinds County. You could pick any area of the state, DeSoto County, and you could do that as well. You could go to the coast, wherever you live, and all of the resources come up. But they're very informational. If you need a job, you can hit job. If you need food, you can do that. If you're looking to have your baby adopted, you can do that. And so I was excited that, we're going to do this. We run it in this office. We've got over 400 resources right now out there that are willing, and so many of them are faith-based. Now, here's the great part, and I do have to report back to the legislature again this year. Okay, how many hits have you had? About 140,000.
Wow.
In 2 years.
That's amazing.
And about 40,000 we've been able to uniquely help, be it a car seat, a toddler bed, a job, whatever the case might be. So we know it's working. So I love when people go, I want your legislation. I want Mississippi's policy. Tell me, I'm like, we will load you up.
Have other state AG offices approached Mississippi's office about that program in particular? I would think
they
it would
have.
Be amazing. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, it's been great. We're glad to send them all the information. Here's how you set it up, what you need to do. But I think that really resonates. The numbers, people use it. Most everybody has a phone. So that's their lifeline now. And so to see it being put into use is incredible.
Particularly the age group that's having children. So, they rely on apps and technology for everything now. So, but that's such a great thing that y'all have done, that y'all have engaged technology that y'all have taken the program to the consumer in that way. The old ways of going down to an agency to seek resources, they don't want to do that. There's a stigma attached to it. And so the way that y'all have taken it to the individual, it removes that stigma or maybe that fear or that embarrassment of needing some assistance. So, that's outstanding that y'all developed a way that you can take the program to the individual.
Thank you. Again, we said we were up for the job, and Mississippi is up for the job. And we've been really putting into action. But it's the partners, it's the legislation, it's the policies, and it's exciting to see them change.
All of that goes back to just the way that you've shaped policy through the 2 statewide offices that you've held. You've been very active in that regard, and history will show that you were made a huge impact in both offices that you've held. And hopefully, down the road, we'll see some other things that come out of Attorney General Lynn Fitch and whatever else holds the future for her.
Well, I appreciate getting the opportunity to be with you all. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your podcast. Thank you for sharing information. And you both are lifting women up, and you're telling great special stories that I think is just such an inspiration and so motivational for our women listeners.
And this is called Pairs Well with Rapid Fire. And we will give you some slogans, and I will say X pairs well with, and you say the first thing that comes to your mind.
It's a lighthearted section. There's no right or wrong answer, and we can always edit.
Great.
So the first one pairs well with leadership.
Motivation.
How about a long day at work pairs well with?
Self-reflection.
A Mississippi Saturday night pairs well with.
An opportunity to visit with your family and friends.
How about a small town? What does a small town pair well with?
Who you really are and where you're from.
And the next chapter pairs well with.
Your God script.
Very well said. Very well said.
One last one. Sweet tea pairs well with.
Almost everything.
Certainly here, right?
It does, yes.
Well, General Fitch, this has been just such a delight for us to be able to spend this afternoon with you. I learned many new things about you today, and I know that our listeners are going to be thrilled to learn as much as we have about you and be inspired by your story and by all you've done to help the women and children and citizens of the state of Mississippi in your role as public servant and certainly now as the Mississippi Attorney General. So we so appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being with you. This has been really special, so thank you.
Well, and for our listeners, next time we'll have another interesting guest, and we will reveal that at the appropriate time. But for today, we will drop the show notes for the Empowerment Project, the Mississippi Women's Summit, and the Attorney General's office itself. So should you need any of those resources, you'll be able to find them in the show notes.
Until next time, we'll see you on Pairs Well With.
The content of this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. Although your hosts are attorneys, Pairs Well With does not provide legal, medical, financial, or professional advice. Listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship. Always seek the advice of qualified professionals regarding any specific questions or concerns you may have.